Welcome to the Fallen Frequency Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Fallon, your guide through the world of music, art, and living life with a vibrational twist. Welcome to another inspiring episode of the Fallen Frequency Podcast. Today we have a truly special guest who holds a special place in my heart, a dear sister, a holistic health and fitness professional, and the co-founder of the Well-Resourced Woman, a group mastermind dedicated to nurturing women in body, mind, and business. I first crossed paths with our guest, Anna Pereira, during my studies at the Czech Institute, and from the moment our souls connected, I knew I had found a kindred spirit. Anna's journey is a tapestry woven with threads of sovereignty, a journey from the corporate world to the awakening of her freedom in body, mind, and soul. In today's episode, we embark on a transformative exploration of Anna's path to sovereignty as she shares the profound insights gained from her time in the corporate world. We delve into her awakening to the freedom that comes from breaking away from the shackles of conventional norms. Anna unfolds her story from pain to purpose, shedding light on why pain occurs and the powerful journey of moving beyond it. But it doesn't end there. Anna generously imparts wisdom on breaking free from the victim mindset, offering tools for cultivating balance while navigating the twists and turns of life. She also shares invaluable insights on how to stay centered while on the move and drawing from her experiences and practices that have kept her grounded through the highs and lows. In addition to exploring Anna's insights into the healing power of nutrition and her ancestral diet philosophy, we unravel the layers of her holistic well-being puzzle from the depths of personal pain to the heights of purposeful living. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and join me in this captivating conversation with Anna Pereira, a true embodiment of strength, grace, and the journey to sovereignty in body, mind, and soul. And just in case you want to go ahead and check out what she's got going on, you can visit her website, wellresourcedwoman.co. That's WELLRESOURCEDWOMAN.co. And you can also follow her on Instagram at Energy with Anna. That's at ENERGYWITHANA. I hope you enjoy this amazing podcast and look forward to hearing your feedback.
It's recording, right?
It's all recording now.
Okay.
So, welcome to the Fallen Frequency Podcast. I have a special guest today, Anna Pereira, and she is a dear friend of mine that I met at the Czech Institute during our Czech Academy classes, and we immediately connected over a lot of different subjects: farming, health, movement, just nature in general, and over time, it's just been an incredible journey seeing her blossom into this amazing woman that she is, and I'm excited to see where this leads us.
Likewise.
Yes.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So, I have a couple questions that I prepared. Let's see. One of the first things I wanted to start off with just letting people know who you are and just kind of your background and your journey, and what led you to where you are in this path of self-discovery and healing, and yeah.
Well, when I was born, no. I'll take you way back, 31 years ago.
Start from the top.
I'll start, yeah. No, we'll be here all night. I would say when you say self-discovery and healing, I guess I can touch on, I do feel like as a child, like all of us, the natural state is curiosity.
Yeah.
And sometimes we lose that throughout the conditioning of life. That being said, I feel like I have kept that state of curiosity in this almost unquenchable thirst for knowledge
Yes.
of all sorts.
Yes. Truth seeker.
Truth seeker. Yeah, of many philosophies and systems. And that being said, it wasn't until I was in college where I started to really ask questions about health on a personal and a collective level, because at that time I was unhealthy. And frankly, I didn't even realize it because most people around me were in a similar state.
Yeah.
So you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
Fish in the
absolutely.
water, right?
Yeah.
That being said, I felt I was sick or having constant bouts of flus and colds all the time and brain
Right.
fog and chronic inflammation. I can name what I had, now. I just didn't feel my best. And so when I started to ask questions about why and why people were in these disease states, complex pathologies, cancer, and so forth. Can we say that word?
Yeah.
Are we gonna get?
Yeah.
Are we gonna?
Who knows? I don't care. I'm just here to share the truth.
Just kidding. I could not get a straight answer.
Yeah.
This is before I was even aware of functional medicine or even other holistic medicines that really start to go into the root cause, to ask those questions.
Right.
And I couldn't get an answer. So I started to ask those questions.
Yeah. And you were working a corporate job originally, right?
Yeah. So basically, fast forward, I started completely changing my lifestyle, nutrition, spending way more time in nature, hiking, rock climbing, and went down a lot of rabbit holes around nutritional therapy, breath work, yoga, consciousness, you name it. And after university, I was working a corporate job, and I was already into this rabbit hole of health and fitness. That being said, I was still experiencing quote unquote dis-ease because I was on this path that wasn't really where my soul was meant to be.
Right.
So you start to feel that
Pull. Yeah.
yeah, there's this resistance on top of working, yes, in a corporate. I was working in an office.
Yeah.
So in the winter, you don't even see the sunlight.
Incandescent lighting.
Yeah.
Just
Ungrounded.
constantly pushing yourself. No sleep, maybe.
Yeah, poor sleep habits at
Yeah.
that time. So all of that to be said, that really made me take a look and shift and see, like, most people around me, again, were living in that lifestyle, generally unhealthy, and most people were doing something that was expected of them by some outside perspective,
Yeah.
society constructs, and were generally dissatisfied.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not going to live this way. So I left.
Yeah. That's amazing that you're able to just make the changes that actually allowed you to just come in more harmony with yourself and listen to that inner voice. Because a lot of people will just cover it up with more substance abuse or video games or whatever distraction they can find that will keep them from actually living into their truth. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that it's a whole rabbit hole if we were to go down addiction.
Yeah.
And it can be a complex topic. That being said, I would say a part of that is we are masking what is really going on the deepest level there. So yeah, I had subtle aspects of addiction. I wouldn't say I have an addictive personality towards anything hardcore. It's always been who I am.
Yeah.
Been able to put anything down if I needed to. That being said, yeah, I needed a complete repattern,
Wow.
complete pattern disrupt. So I quit my corporate job, traveled the world, and ended up doing that on and off for a few years, most of my 20s,
Wow.
traveling around the world and studying the healing arts. And then to go back to your question about self-discovery, that's really where I started to ask that question of who am I, who am I, who am I, what is this? And as I was on this journey outward, it really took me back inward. And I feel that having the space, what a privilege I had to have that space to even contemplate on those questions with a lot of introspection, because the general world that we live in today, that's the matrix you plug into. It takes your energy, it takes your attention. And most people are stuck in this, illusion of busyness
Yeah.
and are not asking those deep questions.
Well, a lot of the time I feel like it shows up in pain, and a lot of people I've noticed in my own life and seeing clients, a lot of people are just in this pain pattern and they want it to go away. That's all they want, but they're not looking at why the pain might have happened or taking responsibility for it. A lot of the time, I know in my past self, I could take this role of victim where it was just, oh, this happened to me. Why am I getting sick? There must be something crazy out there. But a lot of people, even though it's controversial, you could actually stave off and have a strong immune system if you took care of your body and yourself and listened to yourself.
That's controversial? What? Listening to yourself?
Natural immunity, it's a
Yeah, and the pain body is very much part of our animal physiology, and there's that element of survival, of instinct to get out of pain.
Yeah.
And we're also human and have the ability to have this awareness to ask why. And as you just mentioned, instead of being in that state of victimhood, which I would say most people are.
Yeah.
Most people are on a subtle level.
Totally. I mean,
Right.
I've been in it many times and
Same.
thought I was totally
Right.
in
There's
control.
levels. There's levels to it.
Yeah.
To taking responsibility and stepping out of that victim place and asking these questions of why and what is this here to teach me. And that's really often what pain is there for. And also on a pain on a physiological level, which this is like our thing, right? Looking at biomechanics, looking at people, whether it's anatomy or physiology of the physical body of pain. To get to that place, there was a series of events, of momentum, of feelings, of thoughts, of something even preceding that leads there. It
Yeah.
does not happen overnight.
Yeah. Yeah, as a lot of esoteric teachings talk about, which is a whole rabbit hole as well, but I always tell people it's almost like we have these layers outside of us that are different energetic fields, and when something, maybe an emotional trauma or a mental something, some pattern is continuing on over time, it's penetrating through that field and then eventually comes into our physical body, and it's actually been there for a long time.
It's really wise from my limited understanding and studies and mentors and direct experience. That is what
Yeah.
it is. There's this seed within our energetic channel, our Sushumna channel, that often comes from previous, momentum from previous lives.
Yeah. What is the Sushumna?
The Sushumna channel is your central channel where your anatomical spine is an energetic channel.
Okay, yeah.
And essentially, others call it your rainbow bridge or your connection to
Yeah,
a higher,
Kundalini
higher
kind of thing.
consciousness.
Yeah.
There's many different words for it. That being said, this is our energetic channel, and within that, we have seeds
Yeah.
that hold the template of potential momentum.
Yeah.
Positive, negative, beneficial, disruptive, all of it. And that precedes the thought, then the thought that happens, the feeling, then the experience, and we can attract experiences, people, etc., to match that valence charge of moving through that.
Yeah.
So that's
awesome.
another rabbit hole.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, I mean,
and it goes to what we're saying of how these experiences manifest.
yeah, totally. Well, and that leads me to with all the traveling you did and just kind of your own awakening, do you have any tools or tips or tricks that you did to stay somewhat balanced on your travels and things like that?
Yeah, well, when I was traveling extensively, I would say I was traveling with the thirst for the healing arts, and I was also traveling a lot in nature. Not always. I did travel to a lot of cities throughout the world. That being said, that's a little bit of a different style than, let's say, your archetype of the business person who's living in airports and hotels 300 days a year,
Yeah.
that they're going to have a different way. That being said, I feel like what you're asking is like how to stay balanced. When we look at health, one way we can look at that is what's our repair state and what's our injury state,
Yeah.
right? And so health, vitality, if we can increase the rate of repair and decrease the rate of injury, then we're going to be in that state of health more. Travel, generally speaking, can cause more injury, more inflammation, and disrupt certain cycles like our circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
And so, what we can do to mitigate that, I feel, is continue to live the lifestyle of the foundations that you and I practice.
Yeah.
And that becomes second nature. So even when I'm traveling, I'm doing those things. I'm grounding. I'm in nature. I'm hanging out by natural water. I'm eating healthy food, looking for healthy food.
Yeah.
I'm traveling with better optimal snacks, keeping my minerals high, electrolytes. I would say, to answer your question, a really big tip, just make sure you're staying hydrated,
Yeah.
which
That's
is
a
really an
huge one.
electrical event.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I feel like so many times I've easily gotten super burnt out from all the flying, and even just my digestive system is messed up. So just getting good quality water and sleep, those are two of the most easy ways I've found. But sometimes sleep isn't an option, so you just have to stick to, I think, whatever foundations that you can attach to. Sometimes you might not get all of the foundation principles, but if you have your baseline, it's a lot easier to come back to it. Because I feel like a lot of people think of it as a chore, but I feel like when me and you have lived these principles for a while now, it becomes this thing where we're just looking for, where can I get
there's no
good
other
quality water?
option. Well, I feel that you reach a certain state of awareness and health that you're able to tune the instrument that is our body and mind far more. We become far more attuned. So when we're out of that, it's so obvious
Yeah.
that to me, I have no other option than to tune that.
No, it's one of those things that I just laugh that a lot of people are consistently saying, "Oh, I don't want to get too healthy because then I'll be super sensitive, and I don't want to be sensitive to all the things you're sensitive to." But it's funny because I'm usually trying to tell them, "No, you actually are sensitive to those things. You just are not feeling it in your pain body yet." And sometimes that stress bucket rises up and overflows, and that's when we feel the symptoms.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah.
And thinking about that, I feel like I was more sensitive a few years back, like in that mid journey. And then there comes into this balance of, for example, I'm not as militant on my nutrition as I once was.
Yeah.
Because
Same.
I can, and it's probably a good thing.
Yeah, because we went really deep down the rabbit hole of ancestral nutrition and all sorts of stuff. I think that's what we bonded on a lot too. Is just
Oh yeah, it's like making all these crazy, I'm like,
and it's important because then
Yeah.
when you have that baseline, you can have more fun and enjoy sweets and good quality brownies and
yes, we had one of those earlier.
yes,
Yeah, less rigidity is also important. And you start to learn how to integrate these different foundational principles and modalities. Like I look at it like a spoke on a wheel. Nutrition is one of them, and it's a very important one. And one of the best ways for us to harmonize with our biochemistry. That's why I believe that nutritional therapy is extremely important for helping someone to take steps into homeostasis. It's just not the whole puzzle. It's one piece.
yeah,
And as I've learned to incorporate other foundations, not just on the anatomical physiological level, also my mental, emotional bodies, and working more in the subtle bodies and with consciousness, I can, it's all like building up the
yeah,
conglomeration of who I am so that it makes me more resilient in
Yeah.
general. And food is
Yeah.
less of the whole thing.
I feel like even for me, nutrition was huge because I notice with this power center, the where the stomach is, I can easily close that down if I am afraid to truly feel my own willpower and my own inner power. And I feel like eating was a great bridge for me to actually feel, okay, I actually have more control of my energy than I once realized. And that allowed me to then open up this center to even breathe deeper and to be more comfortable and share my own light, which can be scary. And we can close this down and hold tension. And so many people hold tension in their stomach. So I feel like it's one of those bridges too that's just, yeah, it's a foundation that you can't be too rigid about, but you do have to go through that period of rewiring your whole mindset around what's going into your body because
100%.
it all counts, but at the same time, it doesn't.
And I have a new perspective on nutrition.
Yeah,
I can share.
please.
I've yet to talk much about it. And I do want to touch upon what you just said. I think that was when you're talking about that, I'm thinking of the universal law of as above, so below. And when we're working with health holistically, the sequence of going through the act of changing your nutrition and taking care of your body triggers things beyond just the physical.
Yeah,
And simultaneously, the opposite, as you're focusing on your third chakra, solar plexus, where we are processing information and coming into our willpower, right? It's the highest of our lowest chakras. It's still us in our animal body coming into this place of ideally healthy individuation
yeah,
and able to show up in the world with like knowing who we are. And if we have imbalance there, and that's going to show up in certain ways. And then on the physical level, our digestive system in that place is also where we digest and process information.
yeah.
And the gut acts as a brain, so to speak, of processing and taking in and transmitting information.
Wow, yeah, that's a beautiful perspective.
Yeah. And it's the most energetic, intensive system of our body. So I totally agree with you. It's one of the most important things that we need to start paying attention to, especially if you're on a journey of healing, especially if you're on a journey of healing from a pathology that,
Yeah,
as the Vedic said, everything begins in the gut. The gut, in order to detox properly and to take in nutritions, we need to heal the gut. We need
yeah,
to take care and make sure we're eliminating all of these somewhat basics, yet are not that known in the mainstream or used in the allopathic model to that level.
right. Yeah, I
So,
mean, well, even when it comes to nutrition, I've noticed for myself a big journey of me actually knowing about nutrition was going through the whole conundrum of figuring out what's the best diet or asking myself that question. That also leads people astray a lot because there actually is no one best diet. That's the best thing I've learned. And that it's an individual case by case basis, moment to moment, where even our own selves, our diet can change throughout a month or a year or seasons. And it's so relevant to really understand that. And I can also see why people avoid doing the work because that means you have to think for yourself and you don't get someone just telling you this is the best thing you can do for yourself. And of course, there are some amazing scientific studies showing the incredible benefits of certain animal products or, vegetables and different antioxidants and all these amazing things, but it comes down to a case by case basis. And I think,
more than one can even imagine. And that is where my perspective has shifted. I've agreed with what you've said for a while in that there is no perfect diet. There are different, when we say the word diet, I like to think of that more as nutritional therapy. It's not there for your whole life. It's a specific therapy to help create some type of harmony or balance from where you are. There's a place for the ketosis diet. It's helped a lot of people with neurological
dysfunction, yeah.
pathologies and things like that. That doesn't mean it's what we're supposed to be on for years on end.
Yeah.
There's a place for juice cleansing, actually,
Yeah.
where you're fasting and you're giving your digestive system a break and you're taking in specific minerals. The Gerson therapy uses juices and liver, actually, and use them in specific ratios for certain electrolytes, for
Yeah.
example. There's a place for everything depending on what your current internal environment is, also your external environment, like your seasons, also your constitution, also your phase of life.
Yeah.
Are you in a place where you want to have a baby and you want to be fertile and then grow a baby? You're going to have a completely different diet as a woman and the man conceiving than later in life. So there's all of these things. And as we can become more intuitive, and then there's also the very, very individual. And as I've gotten more into muscle testing, that's what I'm really starting to learn. And when I muscle test for what foods to eat, what I'm asking is my physiology, my master control system. So I'm not asking something out there. I'm literally posing the question within my physiology. Do I have an opening in my intestinal cells for this food? And if I do not have an opening, that means that eating that food, even if it's the healthiest food, is going to create some level of waste in the body, metabolic waste, and also put the body on a level of fight or flight that it can't fully relax. And if you're doing that over and over and over and over again with the food, even if it's quote unquote healthy, whether it's chicken or honey or tomatoes, as you know, you're now creating that stress, and your body, it doesn't get that chance to rest and actually detox on a that's total chemistry. That's just like the chemical reaction of that food is creating something now that's leading to this. So that, I know for most people would be like way too much.
Yeah.
And I don't, at this point, muscle test everything I'm eating. There's certain things, though, as I'm learning to create that and cultivate that intuitive practice. And so it becomes less about this food or this diet is perfect. It is that moment to moment, day to day, or season to season of, okay, this is actually nourishing me and this is going to create the opposite effect. So I'm going to avoid it for now.
Yeah. Well, and it comes down to, you're reminding me of tuning an instrument. It really is it's a frequency in a certain level, and it's a vibration that we're taking in that can be harmonizing, or it can take us out of balance. And when we're paying attention to even just within hours of eating something, I think it's super powerful to get in tune with how you might be feeling really good, or you might have a headache. It's sometimes as simple as that. But it gets really complicated because there's a lot of trickery out there when it comes to all the food manufacturers and the labeling, and is it organic or not, and then going deeper down the regenerative biodynamic rabbit hole and all these things. And I have to chill out sometimes when it comes to, I'm aware that I don't want chemicals in my body, but I also want to not always be that guy that's just stopping the flow of someone feeding me an incredible meal that might be made with so much love and wisdom, and rather than just being like, is it organic? Being that guy. Sometimes I have to also tune into that. But speaking of frequency, one of the other questions I had is, how do you see the role of sound and vibration in promoting overall well-being and holistic health? Like, what's your experience with sound, music, and how that's really part of our own health?
Yeah. Well, a lot of vibration. Well, let's not even go down that. A sound is vibration we can hear.
Yeah.
Right. And I love what you said earlier about how we're tuning ourselves as an instrument. It's the way I look at actually the body, very much so as an instrument or a quantum computer. You look at our body, the actual parts that we presumably experience as physical, as the hardware, or as the actual instrument.
Yeah.
And then we're also in this unseen place of the frequency that is unseen.
Yeah.
And that has more of an effect on our health.
Yeah.
People are recognizing that more and more, I feel. And that's the future of medicine, is learning to work with frequency and vibration.
Absolutely.
Truly
agree.
believe that.
Yeah.
Without having to get too technical on that, I feel that every human being has experienced the power of music.
Yeah.
Song and
Absolutely.
dance. That's what makes one of the things that makes humans different from animals.
Yeah. Well, it's storytelling almost in another, or actually maybe even the original storytelling. Now that I'm thinking about it, because there's theories about how we sang before we talked, and we drummed before we sang, things like that. And yeah, it's definitely a language too, I believe.
The language. And just as we have a fingerprint that is unique, that shows there will never be another exact replica of you or me, and that is nature. Nature makes no leaf the same, no anything the same, yet it uses these patterns, these templates of sacred geometry that we hear through music and see through geometrical patterns, particularly in nature. So it's this harmonic experience of motion and sound and colors and so forth that I'd say many of us describe as beauty, which is really how we're experiencing that template of evolution,
Yeah.
creation, and destruction that has so much to teach us. Music being a huge part of that. We were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, well, and even you just reminded me of what you said too, the tension of the opposites. I find a lot of interesting things with playing an instrument where music can be very harmonious, and sometimes when you add in tension that to the human ear actually feels disharmonious, it actually allows you to feel certain things inside of yourself that you might be not aware of, because it's bringing this kind of like, oh, I don't know if I like that feeling, but it actually is bringing on something that then when you actually resolve, if you do resolve, and when I'm thinking musical terms, it really allows you to just feel this weight off your shoulders of like, oh my gosh. And even, I don't know if I've told you about in music theory, and they talk about the history of music theory, actually a lot of these intervals that are pleasing to the ear are based on the overtone series. And so there were certain harmonies that when you played it in a church, it was seen as godly. But then there was other intervals that brought up like a bad feeling, and people were banned to play these intervals in a church. And it's interesting because it comes back to, even the people that we're in relationship with at times where we might be in the same room, and if we're harmonizing, if we're on similar frequencies, we're making these pleasing harmonies that may not be audible, but are very powerful.
Yeah, and I can see like sound, right? If you hear a car crash or something that's totally disruptive, it's like this. We've all felt that. It's
Yeah.
indescribable, and we
Yeah.
all know that. And on the flip side, when we hear a bird sing,
Yeah.
I'd say it's a universal feeling of like, oh wow,
Yeah.
beautiful
Totally.
angels.
Yeah.
And that is a feedback of there's so much happening under the surface
Yeah.
that we're unaware of. And interestingly, with frequency, with vibration, like right now, I don't know if those are maybe the best words to use, what I'm about to explain. Our nervous systems are talking back and forth and sending a ton of information constantly. You're doing this with every person that you come in contact with.
Yeah.
Now, the more you can tune into that, the more you become aware of what is happening. And we're all doing this. We're all
Yeah.
speaking on that level. These are all frequencies. I carry a frequency that is me, or even a morphic resonance. You carry one that is you. We also have one that is human, just
Yeah.
like a tree has one that is tree. And all of these, and we're communicating in these
That's
unsaid
fascinating.
ways. And yeah, and then you even touched upon language.
Yeah.
Communication, vibration, and that is where I was going. Is just as our fingerprint is unique, so is our voice,
Yeah.
and the way that we're able to express that, and the tone and vibration. So yeah, I'm no expert on any of this yet. There's definitely a lot there to be
Yeah.
untapped.
Well, I love it. And even just the importance of, feel like music and vibration bring a certain flow. I've noticed with you, you've inspired me a lot with just your way of flowing with movement and dance and all of these different aspects and just getting into that rhythm, which I think is also another really important aspect to health that a lot of people have underrated. I know there are people that are bringing to light the importance of dance and movement, but it's still so undiscovered in many ways. Or it's rediscovered. I guess it's
That
being rediscovered, I should say.
is extremely wise what you said. And actually, if we really want to peel back health on there's these levels of initiation processes and health that we go through on the human experience, physical, emotional, mental, and so forth. And on that physical, to really come into the mastery of the physical body is rhythm. Rhythm with the days, the seasons, rhythm with the nature. That is why gardening, and you touched on biodynamics. Rudolf Steiner, the creator of biodynamics, he created that for development of consciousness.
Yeah.
Not just to make mineral-rich
Wow.
food and take care of the land. It was because he knew that if to farm biodynamically, you must be so in touch with the rhythms of nature, the days with the earth and the cosmos, and how that's all interrelating day by day, lunar cycle by lunar cycle, solar cycle by solar cycle, planetary cycles, and so forth. That gets you so in tune with rhythms
Yeah.
that now you're able to go upon that development of consciousness.
Yeah.
Circadian rhythm is a huge part of health, as we know, working with light and sleep and all these things when we're eating. And
Yeah.
so, yes, rhythm is a huge part of health, and music and movement,
Yeah.
as you just touched upon. And even not just in dance, even in sports,
Yeah.
rhythm and the ability to have patience and the ability to have, like, if you can imagine, like someone, playing basketball, that ability to slow and then go and then duke,
Right.
and like that is rhythm as well. And it's why we think we love watching it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Right.
It's an art. And so the ability to do that with your body has so many benefits. It's
Yeah.
part of the ideal human, biomechanical expression.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. I love that.
Yeah.
That's super inspiring. Let's see what else. Let's see. We're going right along. This is awesome. I guess one of the things. I mean, we probably already touched on it on some level, but I'm curious of what you think, especially now that we've been on our own path as coaches and working with clients and just seeing the world of health and fitness, and it's a very saturated market at this point. What do you think is not having enough attention right now, or people are not aware enough of?
It's a great question. I guess that depends on the person. It's like, are we saying in the general population?
I would say the general population, for people that are listening and really want to know maybe something to pay more attention to than they've been taught or told to.
Yeah, I would say it's a great question. And there's no right answer of the sequence we go on within each of our unique journeys. I think that in the last decade, nutrition has become pretty, I think a lot of people may still feel confused by what we talked about earlier and information overload. People are starting to get it.
Yeah.
Nutrition is important.
Yeah.
Exercise is important. Now there's a rabbit hole we can go on of what is best and this and this. So to answer your question, I would say hydration. Now I'm going to go through what are these foundations, and breath, which is so overlooked because we do it all the time.
Yeah.
And
water and breath, those are super important. And I know there's a big booming of people talking about different types of water.
And
but
breath.
And breath work and all these things have really taken storm. But it's interesting because I still feel like when I talk about something like structured water or why spring water is beneficial, a lot of people are still confused
Well, it's so misunderstood. Okay, let's take a different reframe at health that maybe people haven't thought about before. So that can kind of spur something.
Yeah.
Because most people, unless you're on this journey already, they're thinking water is how we hydrate, the quantity of water, and then they're going to a place where they're like, oh, there's a lot of shit in our tap water, literally. So maybe we should filter that. And then you go on the journey and just continue on, right? I think it's important to understand that hydration is, I mentioned it earlier, it's an electrical event. It's so much more than the water. It's a charge aspect. Like nutrition to me is a chemical event more than, I mean, it isn't just that.
Yeah.
That being said, on that level of medicine, most people are using nutritional therapy to shift the biochemistry. Hydration is electrical. Every mineral has its own valence charge, and how that interacts. Electrolytes, electricity,
Yeah.
lights. Without electrolytes in the water, there's no charge, and therefore there's no hydration. Period.
Yeah.
And you mentioned structure of water. That doesn't happen without a specific charge, which as far as we understand, is from the infrared light, ideally of the sun, and the charge of that with the electrolytes and also movement, which creates this electrical movement. So every health foundation ultimately adds up to this electrical event of hydration, grounding. We're literally pushing all the positively charged most toxins are positively charged. Your feces is positively charged. We want to push that out, and then that slightly negative charge that creates that structured water you're talking about, that is where health is. And someone I know we both admires work, Zach Bush. I've heard him talk about, and my friend who works with him, like, about this test called which I'm blanking on in this very moment, but he uses a test to test the polarity of to test hydration on a polarity level. So instead of just testing how much water, whatever you have in your bloodstream, they're looking on the cellular level of what that charge is. And the highest is 12, which is optimal health. Like if you're above 9, which most people don't test above, you're so hydrated, your state of repair is so high that
Yeah.
nothing can touch you.
Right.
3.5 is death. Everyone they've tested that has cancer is at 4.
Wow.
4.5 maybe, like they're under 5, 4.5, 5.
Jeez.
So that's an example, right? They're chronically dehydrated. They don't have that charge, that polarity that is
Yeah.
life. I mean, even think about it. What's a flat line? We call that death.
Yeah.
We call it death in this experience.
Yeah. It's no electricity
There's
flowing.
you're right. How do we revive someone? Electric flow.
Yeah.
So that when you start thinking of health in this electric flow,
Yeah.
it's a total paradigm
And that goes back to
shifter.
even the body too, of thinking about, where we might be tight or weak, or if we don't have proper posture. And, a lot of people are always asking, how do I get better posture? What's better posture? What does that even mean? But actually, if you think about it, it's electrical flow, really. That's a cool way to think about it.
And posture is so much integrated with your breath.
Yeah.
We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, rib
Which is
expansion.
so connected to your nervous system. And most people, that's what they're talking about right now in health, right? How do I regulate my nervous system?
Yeah.
Going from the mind to the body, somatic work is becoming more and more popular. People are starting to recognize the importance of moving emotion through the body, regulating our nervous system. Our breath is that centerpiece,
Yeah.
period. And we can look at that biomechanically, what's going on in the diaphragm. How are we influencing that? What do our breathing patterns look like? If you're breathing 22,000 times a day, are we doing that correctly? And then we can go into so many deep levels of how to
Yeah.
improve our breath and how to use breath to experience different states or to create different states of consciousness, essentially.
Yeah. It is really, it's the vehicle of life. It's prana. When I think about that, the more and more I get an understanding of even a lot of the things nutritionally or things that disrupt us, a lot of the time are disrupting our breath as well, and our ability to even have that, the microcosmic orbit being connected with our tongue and breathing through the nose and all these subtle things that, I mean, we could talk about for
Yeah,
days.
and we can get super geeky on like,
Yeah.
oh, well, breathing through the nose creates nitric oxide, which creates
You got to
blood
use
flow,
mouth tape
and all these things, and sometimes people need that. I did.
yeah.
It gets, 'cause, okay, breathe through your nose. Okay, cool. Why? And that goes back to why. Well, what are these questions? Why is that good?
Yeah.
And then part of that's also just experiencing the difference between mouth breathing and nose
Yeah.
breathing chronically. It's the biggest shift I've made in my fitness, not
Yeah.
even just my health. Just like pure cardiovascular fitness was changing and teaching myself how to nasal breathe even when I'm doing a really difficult exercise.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's powerful too, just because I think that is really when I go back to what I think is missing in a lot of the fitness industry and health industry is really what we've been talking about a lot of the time is these basic principles that a lot of people are overlooking and looking for some magic pill or something that's just going to get them to the next step or allow them to get out of pain quickly, when really it is a lifestyle, and it shouldn't be out of the way. I believe it should be something that is accessible and that we learn from kindergarten onward and are able to actually have our own sovereignty of our body. And that makes me think of too, I know me and you have talked a lot about sovereignty and freedom and even just abundance and all of these different things about what that really means. And what does that mean to you? What does sovereignty and freedom mean to you?
Well, the etymology of sovereignty is to reign over self. I'll use self with a capital S. Freedom is something we cultivate from within, period. And something I've reflected upon a lot this year, I asked a mentor of mine that I see we work a lot on the psyche, the subconscious, the superconscious, and all of these aspects. And I asked her the very first time I worked with her, "Oh, do we have free will?" That's right. I guess asked her question. She answered it practically, and we've
Yeah.
delved into it in many ways since. And that was, you only have free will to the degree you know what drives your behavior. If you don't know why you eat that chocolate cake, or why you like that music, or that person, you're in that relationship, or you're doing that job, if you don't know why, what is driving your behavior, you're not accessing your free will.
Yeah.
You're running a program. You're running a conditioning.
Yeah.
That comes back to those seeds we talked about. That can be very, from that aspect, a lot of it is childhood, pre-verbal up to like age 7, and then just going through life and having to adapt and being in different relationships and family dynamics and all of these things that we experience. And until we choose to develop that awareness and start to expand that awareness, which especially at the beginning is really valuable to do with a practitioner, a coach, and so forth, that can help reveal blind spots and help you to open that awareness into why you do the things that you do, we don't have freedom.
Yeah.
You're running programs, and the average person has at least 600 selves or algorithms.
Wow.
So if I want to like, I'm gonna rabbit hole in this
I
question
love this.
because
Hell yeah.
it's a good one. So if I look at the human ecosystem like a computer, like a quantum computer, we just touched a lot upon what the hardware is, the anatomy, the physiology that we're experiencing. And we have our software as well. We can call that psyche, the ego framework, the personality structure. And in that, we have many different quote unquote selves or parts. Different systems call them one or the other. I don't know
Yeah.
if this rings a bell.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those selves do not have a consciousness the way you are conscious. They're algorithms or files that get stored within the software. Some of them are beneficial, some are neutral, some are disruptive. They cannot be deleted. They cannot be erased.
Yeah.
Yet we can choose through the inner work to stop referencing the destructive, disruptive selves and continue to only and to start referencing more and more of the beneficial. In other words, you will always have a personality and an ego. That's a part of this experience. It's not about killing the ego. What we can do, though, is stop referencing the parts, not suppress or disown or pretend they're not there, knowing that they're there and creating the awareness that they're there. And how you start to know what they are is what triggers you. So if you say something and that triggers me and I go into a reactive state, that's a self that is preserving itself, and it's a learned behavior because you just triggered something in me that, for example, my dad used to say something like that, so and I had to protect this, and now that, and it creates that whole story.
Yeah.
So if you don't even know that that's happening, you do not have free will.
Yeah.
Just to bring it back to that.
Totally.
And the more we can learn who we are at the core and at the essence, that's when we have freedom. And to experience freedom in this human experience, there's many vehicles of that. There's freedom in the body and of health, and there's freedom of the mind that I just touched upon. And there's the vehicle freedoms of money and time freedom and location freedom and lifestyle freedom, and all these ways I look at freedom. Because I want to fully express the truth and the essence of who I am.
Yeah.
Yet if I have those vehicles and I do not have the actual internal freedom, they will only drive me crazier, right? We know that.
Yeah.
More money is only more problems to the person that doesn't know what drives their problems.
Yeah.
It's going to
it's like putting
accentuate the
pressure on
problems.
like an unstable building that may be tilted to one side, and you're just putting more and more weight on it, and it's just going to turn to one side or break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. So freedom is like these many, many layers. And
do you think you have to forget yourself, or I guess unlearn, or do you think it's more of you're integrating at the same time that you're unlearning? What's your viewpoint of that?
I'd say like it's not so much forget. I wouldn't use the word forget. I would say it's just creating more awareness. And that's the first step. The next step is the process of the repatterning or the action of moving into that freer, or that the momentum towards the more beneficial route.
Yeah.
And
the higher self.
The higher self.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. The more, because I think that's the thing that a lot of people get tripped up with free will and things like that too. There's multiple realities happening at the same time. And it's really, you're tapping into what reality that is at every moment, with every word you're speaking, with every thought you're thinking. All of these different little actions can add up. And so if we're not coherent with our thoughts and what we're saying out loud and all of these different things, that's when also we can become, I've noticed where I've done a lot of inner work, and even this past year was such an upgrade for me to realize that I may be aware of the patterns that were holding me back, but I still was saying things out loud that were actually incoherent with what I was wanting my reality to change into.
That's a big one.
Yeah. Being able to like just let that go and actually stop myself from saying, oh, this is going to be a horrible situation or whatever, because maybe it's not that I don't want to be honest. Of course, I'll say something sucks or is not good, but at the same time, how much am I going to perpetuate that and actually start believing in, we've talked a lot about all these different conspiracy theories and things that I won't get into in this episode, but you can kind of get wrapped up in them, and they enliven me because I realize that a lot of these things that we've been told are untrue, and so then I'm seeking what is the real truth. But then I can start to get anxiety about the fact that I've been lied to my whole life.
I think that's part of the process, at least for some of us, because I feel I've been there for sure. It's like going through the anger. Like if you stay there, if you stay in the fear or the anger, it's unhealthy. And also anger is a healthy emotion that we move through to get to a place of acceptance.
Yeah.
And to be lied to your entire life can feel very, all the things you just said.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
also to live in that place of now fear because of all of that, or just getting obsessed and into these cycles, is also unhealthy. So how do we learn how to take that awareness and channel it into actually changing ourselves, and then creating a better change within the world, because fear is just the frequency of the past.
Yeah.
It's just a reaction of like, it's just keeping you in the past. And so it's not the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it reminds me of, as we wrap this up, like I've noticed that a lot of people are, in this state of chaos in the world. A lot of people are very much anxious and trying to find some way to get grounded back into their selves. And I find that a lot of people don't want to look at the truth, because that means they have to actually forget everything that they've known to be true to then remember who they are. Mm-hmm. Which is, I don't blame them. I totally understand why people want to watch the news or whatever. But at the same time, as I've done my awakening work, I feel so much better, and I feel so much more sovereign, and my health and vibrancy is so much more at a higher frequency, that it was tough at first to realize that a lot of these things were not as I thought. But yeah, like, what would you say is a way for people to navigate that?
Yeah, it's like, I get it. It's so big. Recognize it's a process. I can just say from my own personal experience that this has been something I've been actively choosing to move through for over 10, 11, 12 years. And maybe even longer than that if I really think back. I was starting to think about these things in high school. That being said, it wasn't overnight. And it's like you learn and you integrate, and
You kind of have to forget and then remember a little
yeah,
bit.
we have to unlearn.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the challenge, and then that requires change, and therefore the metaphorical death and rebirth that there is very much a part of each of us that has a lot of resistance to that.
Yeah.
And that's, to be honest, it's the choice to move through that and to grow, and it's often, it can be the harder choice. That being said, like you just said, you feel better and better because sovereignty is coming back to the essence of truth,
Yeah.
which is love.
Yeah.
And in that place, like, for example, if one, let's just say one of those selves has this X, Y, and Z that creates, I compromise my values, or I people please, or I do this and that, moving through and changing that, if that is something that has created, because a self is really just in its way protecting you, or it's wanting to preserve because it's at one point been a source of survival or
Yeah.
preservation. And so to change that, it can, depending on what we're talking about for each person, can take time. Yet once you do, now that's no longer something you reference, and you
Yeah.
just get to come into a greater source of truth within yourself.
Yeah.
And that's maybe an idealist of me, but that's like, that's an answer that
Yeah.
we can move into to create less polarization and conflict in the world, and little by little.
Yeah.
Just
Totally.
like,
Step by step. Well, and speaking of polarity too, one thing I wanted to touch on, that I find very interesting, especially getting a woman's perspective of, there's a lot of different ways it could go, but the men and women today of our modern society, when it comes to everything from connecting to dating to creating families, it's all seems to be in disarray in some way. And a lot of the time I'm seeing that a lot of what I see on movies and news and all these things is really empowering women to have this incredible sovereignty, which is amazing on one hand. Like, I love that. But at the same time, it also seems like it's promoting this separation of not allowing us to understand how we might serve each other, or, what we could do to benefit each other. I know that's not everyone, but I'm curious of what your perspective is on that.
I think that there are many, well, consciousness works in cycles, and right now I believe we're in this cycle, this point of hyperpolarity. We often hear we're coming out of this age of patriarchy, and I do not say that hitting on any specific man. It's just a system where generally speaking, the masculine was out of balance in both men and women. And there created a suppression upon the feminine, which is, of course, going to show up as a suppression, particularly on women who embody the feminine principle. Now, each person, no matter how you want to affiliate, has the masculine and feminine polarity within you. That being said, women generally are portraying that feminine, right? And men masculine. So we just went through this, and now the pendulum is swinging. We're swinging into a new cycle, and new systems are coming out of that. And in that, I imagine there's a lot of confusion. I know there's a lot of confusion. And I think that a part of that is that we haven't had the healthy, leaders or examples of what that looks like when in harmony. Many men, as you know, more than I do, haven't grown up with healthy men and masculine examples, haven't had the initiatory processes from boys to men. And so there's a lot of boys, 50-year-old boys running around.
Yeah.
Women, it happens too, yet we have a bit more of the initiatory process in our natural cycles through, our menstrual cycles and through child rearing and things that men don't get quite at, traditionally men have had to actively go on these vision quests and things. That being said, women, we've also become extremely disconnected, as a collective, from those processes too. So I think that that's what we're experiencing, and it's creating confusion, a lot of confusion. I think that we're having a collective identity crisis for many, many reasons that we probably don't have time to go into right now as we're finishing up. We're also seeing that within the individual psyche of an identity crisis and then how that portrays out.
Yeah.
So what is the answer to that?
Yeah.
I think we can start by looking within ourselves at where we can, as always,
and embodying those two polarities.
Exactly.
It's like funny how I've noticed so many people are like, I'm doing my divine masculine work, or I'm, like that whole world, and I appreciate it. Like, I definitely understand that as men, we need to grow and be honest with ourselves. But I really think it comes back to actually being in our center. Really, that's it.
A true authentic self.
True authentic self-center. It has no necessarily masculine or feminine, like this is it. It's actually the center.
The center. Yeah. And also helping boys and girls who are going through these processes like adolescence. We all experienced it and maybe have amnesia a bit of how difficult that process is. It's like really that first death rebirth that we've experienced since birth. And really creating these structures and systems and healthy role models, for kids to be grounded and centered within themselves and connected to themselves and their bodies. And that, I feel, is what we're missing in society.
Yeah, it comes back to nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I actually think most of our answers lie in the ability to sit and observe nature in a very real way and the patterns and cycles that she has to show us.
Yeah.
And that's
amazing.
We're gonna see a lot of craziness in the next aspect of our lifetimes around that.
No, it's an exciting and crazy time to be alive. Well, with that being said, my final question is, if you were to leave the world tomorrow and you had to leave us with one message for everybody or a certain group, what would that be?
One message?
Yeah, it's tough.
One? There's so many. God. Well, this too shall pass.
I like that.
Yeah. good shall pass, the bad shall pass.
Yeah, I mean, the
You know,
ancient wisdom, you know.
it's true. Yeah, and actually, I think what you just touched upon is beautiful, like coming back into our center. Because, like, with everything that is happening, no matter what happens, even if it feels like the world is falling apart, sometimes it does, there you are. And you, like, go on that path of self-discovery to discover who you really are.
Mm.
And it will not lead you astray.
Yeah.
Perhaps on a windy, magical, sometimes terrifying adventure.
Yes.
Yeah,
the
adventure
hero's
we're all
journey.
here for. The hero's journey. Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you so much for all of your amazing wisdom, and just love having you as a friend. And it's awesome that we finally
Me
get to
too.
be here sharing this. So more to come. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Love you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yes. Thanks again for listening to this incredible conversation with Anna Pereira. If you want to learn more about what she's up to, you can follow her on Instagram at Energy with Anna. That's ENERGYWITHANA. Or you can go to her website, wellresourcedwoman.co, WELLRESOURCEDWOMAN.co. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you really enjoyed it, please go leave a review or share it with a friend that you think might enjoy, and I'll see you on the other side.